A black beggar turns in the millionaire's bed and uncovers a shocking, unexpected secret. Rain hammered down like fists on the grimy subway platform. Isadora Smith, wrapped in her threadbare coat, stood shivering, clutching her bags like lifelines. The city roared around her, horns blaring, footsteps splashing, strangers shouting. She was invisible there, a shadow among millions, juggling 3 draining jobs just to keep the lights on. Then, soaking wet and numb, her eyes caught something gleaming near the puddle by the tracks. A sleek, expensive smartphone, too fancy for this dirty platform. The screen lit up with a notification. Lorenzo Anderson, owner of Anderson Enterprises. The name screamed wealth, power, mystery. Isadora's heart hammered. Would she pocket it? Sell it? Or, shit, return it? Curiosity battled with gut instinct. This wasn't just any lost phone. There was an intense, almost electric chill about it, like it pulsed with secrets. Her fingers trembled as she slid it into her coat. The train rumbled in. Her decision felt urgent, like a ticking clock in a thriller. Could she really dare knock on the door of New York's most elusive billionaire? The city around her blurred. Neon signs flickered. Puddles reflected distorted faces rushing by. The air smelled of wet concrete and something else, something metallic and sharp, like danger. She found the address scribbled in one notification. A penthouse tower glistening above the storm like a ship in a dark sea. Lightning split the sky as Isadora's soaked footsteps echoed in the marble hallway. When the door swung open, a cold gaze met hers. Lorenzo himself, tall, sharp, eyes calculating. No smile, just silence slicing through the thunder. "Why are you here?" His voice was a low rumble, as distant as the storm outside, but just as wild. She held out the phone, voice cracking. "You dropped this. I thought you'd want it back." Something in the room tightened. The air thickened with suspicion, disbelief. Then a slow, reluctant nod. "Come in." His apartment was all gleaming surfaces and shadows. Expensive art watched them from the walls. The rain hammered harder, drowning out the city's noise. Isadora's breath caught. Behind Lorenzo's steely eyes, something fragile flickered, an unseen crack in the armor. Her chest tight. Her hands shook as a sudden moment broke their frost. A quiet softness in his glance, then, without warning, a tender kiss. Sharp, unexpected. It hit Isadora like a storm surge, making the world spin. Then, a sudden dizziness swallowed her whole. Lorenzo's face paled. He caught her before she collapsed, panic flashing in those hard eyes. The secret spilled out between gasps. Isadora's severe anemia, the struggle she hid from the world. And there, in the heart of his polished fortress, Lorenzo chose to leap into her chaos instead of turning away. Promises of help, offers of care, a sudden, wild contrast to the cold city grind she knew so well. But beneath the fragile new bond, shadows lurked, Lorenzo's past, tangled and dangerous, waiting like a storm beneath the calm. Could love really bloom in this tempest? Would the secrets they held pull them apart, or bind them tighter than ever? And when Lorenzo whispered his future vow, hinting at secrets buried deep, Isadora's heart pounded with both hope and fear. The glitter of the wedding ring was a fragile promise against the gathering storm. What darkness awaited behind his perfect smile? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without warning. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss out on any exclusive content coming your way. And while you're there, your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Isadora's heart raced as she stood in Lorenzo's shimmering apartment, the storm outside mirroring the chaos within her. The kiss still tingled on her lips, a shocking spark of warmth in a world that felt cold and unkind. But as the adrenaline fluttered in her chest, she realized their connection was precarious, hanging by a thread. "Isadora," Lorenzo breathed, his eyes searching hers. "You don't understand." A loud crash suddenly reverberated through the sprawling space, cutting him off. The front door flew open, slamming against the wall. A figure stumbled in, drenched and panting, carrying a fierce urgency that wrapped around the room like a thick fog. "Lorenzo, we need to talk, now!" The intruder was a man with wild eyes, his clothes clinging to him as if he had emerged from the depths of the storm. "What are you doing here, Marco?" Lorenzo snapped, the warmth in his gaze vanishing. Isadora's heart sank. Tension twisted in the air, and the warmth of their moment fizzled like a spent firecracker. She shifted uncomfortably, taking a step back as the tightness in the room intensified. Marco's presence felt like a heavy weight pressing against her chest. "You're in danger. I found out. It's bigger than we thought." Marco's voice trembled, urgency clawing at every word. "Someone wants you dead." Isadora's breath caught in her throat, confusion swirling in her mind. She had entered this world of wealth and danger, but now it seemed that the stakes were far higher than she imagined. "Dead?" Lorenzo echoed, rage and concern knitting his brow. "What are you talking about?" "Look," Marco hesitated, glancing at Isadora before focusing back on Lorenzo. "It's your father. He's involved in something twisted. You can't trust anyone, not even those close to you." Isadora's head spun. Lorenzo's father? The mystery took on a darker shade, and a knot of fear tightened in her gut. "But I thought," Lorenzo's voice faltered, "he's just an old businessman. He wouldn't." "Don't be naive. There's a reason the family has so much power. And Isadora, you're right in the middle of it now. They'll come for you next." Marco's eyes flickered with panic, causing Isadora's skin to prickle. "What?" Isadora stammered, a tremor rippling through her frame. "I can't explain everything right now," Marco said, urgency spilling out of him like water from a shattered vase. "But you need to leave. You both need to go. Tonight." Lorenzo's expression twisted, torn between disbelief and fear. "What are you saying?" Suddenly, a sound sliced through the tension. A soft ping echoed from Lorenzo's phone on the glossy table, and all eyes shot toward the screen. A message from a number Isadora didn't recognize flickered into view. "Get out now, before it's too late." The room plunged into silence. Isadora's heart thudded loudly in her ears, the reality of the situation crashing down. Every foundation she thought she had built with Lorenzo felt like it was crumbling. Lorenzo reached for the phone, his fingers trembling. "What are you not telling me, Marco?" Before Marco could respond, the lights flickered, and Isadora's breath caught. The shadows danced wildly on the walls, a sinister thread emerging from the dark. Just then, the door swung open once more with a loud bang. The figure that stepped inside, made Isadora's blood run cold. An imposing silhouette, dressed in a tailored suit, but with an edge that felt dangerously sharp. Lorenzo stiffened, and for a flash of a moment, Isadora saw recognition flicker in his eyes. "Father," he breathed, his voice barely a whisper. In that instant, the air crackled with anticipation. Who was this man? What secrets lay hidden beneath the surface? As Lorenzo's father stepped into the light, a deep chill swam at the edges of Isadora's heart. A realization dawned that would change everything. Nothing would ever be the same again. "Father," Lorenzo breathed, his voice barely a whisper. The man stepping into the room was a towering figure, dressed in a tailored suit that screamed authority. Shadows wrapped around his presence, like a predator that had cornered its prey. "Lorenzo," the man replied, a chilling intensity underlying each syllable. "There's much we need to discuss." Isadora's skin crawled, the weight of danger hanging heavily in the air. She glanced between them, confusion and fear mingling within her. Their eyes locked, and Isadora felt like an intruder in a world so different from her own, a world of power and secrets. Marco shifted nervously, casting glances back at the door. "We were just talking about—" "Need I remind you," Lorenzo's father interrupted, his voice a whip crack of authority, "that family matters are not for public discussion." Tension thickened, stinging like the cold air seeping through the cracked windows. Isadora's heart raced. The sharpness in the air felt like a knife against her throat. Something was off, something horrifying just beneath the surface. "Who's the girl?" Lorenzo's father asked, his cold gaze cutting through Isadora's resolve. She's important to me," Lorenzo stammered, as if the very act of defending their bond would expose them to danger. "Important?" the older man scoffed, disdain curling his lip. "Or a liability?" "I'm not a liability," Isadora shot back, a spark of fire igniting inside her, battling against the icy weight of the room. But the strength dissipated as the father's stare bore down on her, unyielding, assessing. "Enough," Lorenzo growled, stepping in front of her. "What are you hiding? What danger are we really in?" The man smirked, but Isadora saw the flicker of something darker in his eyes. "You really have no idea, do you?" A darkness swept over him, swallowing the warmth of the room. "You were always too naive for this world." "What do you mean?" Lorenzo pressed, his voice rising. "I mean—" The father's brows knitted together, a storm brewed in the depths of his gaze. "I mean that the family business isn't merely financial. It's a web of influence that runs deeper than you can fathom. We control lives." The tension was palpable, thick as a fog rolling in over a city at midnight. Isadora's throat felt dry. The meaning seeped into her consciousness like poison. Before she could process his words, the lights flickered again, plunging them into darkness for a fleeting moment. A thunderous bang erupted as a window shattered nearby, shards scattering like daggers across the polished floor. Isadora gasped and instinctively clasped Lorenzo's arm, fear pooling in her stomach. "Run!" Marco shouted, the urgency vibrating through the room. But before they could move, Lorenzo's father unveiled a hidden drawer in the coffee table, revealing a glinting handgun tucked inside. Eyes wide, Isadora felt her breath hitch, a rush of disbelief mingled with sheer terror. This is what I'm talking about. You don't understand the world you've stepped into." He leveled the gun toward them, the cold metal like ice against her skin. "Father," Lorenzo shouted, the heat of anger and disbelief igniting his veins. "What have you done?" The man's grip tightened around the weapon, his face steeling into a mask of determination. "I'm protecting our legacy, son. You can't let anyone—" But the door swung open, and two armed men stormed in. "There's no time. You need to leave, now." Gunfire erupted, lighting up the room like fireworks in the night. Isadora screamed, her heart racing as chaos enveloped them. In the tumult, Lorenzo shouted, "What have you done?" But all she could hear was the deafening roar of their lives spiraling out of control. Just before the world went dark for her, she caught a fleeting glimpse of a flash of recognition in Lorenzo's father's eyes as he locked onto the intruders. His face transformed into something terrifying, dark and twisted, a man who was more monster than father. And in that moment, everything shifted, realigning her reality into something unrecognizable. Was Lorenzo really the man she thought he was? Or was he bound to a storm of secrets, swirling just beneath the surface? Isadora's heart raced faster than the chaos swirling in the room. Gunfire echoed, the sharp sound cutting through her like glass. She clung to Lorenzo, panic making her breath hitch. The man before them, Lorenzo's father, transformed into a menacing figure, the gun still aimed, the air itself vibrating with fear. But then a new sound, a grating screech, shattered the tense moment. The window on the far wall, already fractured, seemed to explode outward. Glass rained down like jagged raindrops. And in that spit, time slowed. Isadora's pulse faltered, and the chaotic scene around her blurred. The room dimmed, shadows dancing wildly. Through the shards of glass and the panic, she saw a figure emerge beyond the chaos, a woman clad in black, stepping through the opening where the window had shattered. She moved with unnatural grace, as if the storm itself had birthed her. Lorenzo's father's face contorted in shock. "What the hell are you doing here?" "Cut the theatrics, Charles," the woman said, her voice icy. She turned her gaze toward Isadora, piercing blue eyes locking onto her. "You're in danger, girl. You have no idea what you're dealing with." Isadora's breath caught anew, confusion battling with every instinct to run. Who was she? The aura that surrounded the woman was powerful, demanding attention, forcing them all to focus on her. Before anyone could speak, the woman reached into her pocket and with a swift motion, threw a small object onto the floor, a round device. It landed with a soft thud before bursting into a blinding light, emanating an ear-piercing shriek that resonated deep in Isadora's bones. "Cover your ears," Lorenzo shouted, but it was too late. The light engulfed the room, and all Isadora could see was white. It felt like her soul was being pulled apart. She barely registered the gunfire, the shouting, the chaos before collapsing to her knees. She pressed her palms to her eyes, feeling sick with confusion. When the light faded and the noise dimmed, she blinked up at an eerie silence. But the silence didn't last long. Lorenzo gasped beside her. "Isadora, look." She turned. There, the woman stood unbothered, a smirk on her lips. "It's done," she said, her voice haunting. The chaos around them seemed to have paused entirely, the tension frozen mid-air as if they were trapped inside a glass bubble. "Done?" Lorenzo echoed, bewildered. Isadora felt lightheaded as she stood, trying to process what had just happened. The woman stepped closer, a knowing look in her eyes. "You're only beginning to scratch the surface, Lorenzo. Your father's web is vast, tangled with decisions made long before you were born. You need to know." Suddenly, the door burst open again, this time with a loud crash, revealing Marco, panic-stricken, eyes wide with terror. "It's not safe. We have to go, now." He seemed to materialize from nowhere, breathless and frantic. But it was the woman who silenced him with a gesture. "You can't go yet. Not until you understand." Lorenzo's father, still gripping the gun, recovered his voice, fury igniting. "You think you can just waltz in here?" "Shut up, Charles," the woman snapped. "Your control is slipping. It might already be too late." Isadora felt a chill crawling up her spine. What did she mean? What control? "Look, just leave," Marco urged, glancing nervously at the shattered window. "They'll be here. We're running out of time." With those words, Isadora's world tilted. Instinctively, she reached for Lorenzo's arm. His eyes searched hers, filled with confusion and urgency. "Who are you?" Isadora demanded of the woman. "What do you know about us? About him?" The woman smiled enigmatically. "You really don't know, do you?" And then she did the unthinkable. In one quick motion, she pulled off a silver locket hanging from her neck, tossing it toward them. It landed with a clink at their feet. They glanced down. Isadora's heart raced as the locket rolled open, revealing tiny pictures inside, images of an unfamiliar baby, laughing, cradled in the arms of a woman who looked exactly like her. As confusion enveloped them, the shocking truth unfurled like a blade through the air, cutting through everything they thought they knew. Who was she really? What did this mean for Lorenzo and for Isadora? With that one revelation, the entire foundation of their lives trembled, and Isadora could only wonder, who was the real enemy, and who could they trust? Isadora's pulse thundered in her ears, drowning out the chaos which she felt trapped in. The sight of that locket, the face of a baby that looked so much like her, twisted her stomach in knots. She didn't understand. Why was this woman here? What did it all mean? "What do you want?" Isadora's voice trembled, but it came out stronger than she felt. The woman's blue eyes burned with intensity. "You're caught in a game far, far larger than you realize, but you are the key." Suddenly, the ground shook beneath them, a low rumble that felt like the world was splitting apart. Isadora stumbled, gripping the edge of the table for balance. Lorenzo's father glared at the woman. "What did you do?" His fear was palpable, veins tightly coiled in his neck. Before she could respond, a loud crash echoed through the apartment. One of the walls buckled and a large panel broke through, creating a gaping hole. Dust and debris rained down like confetti, weirdly celebratory against the horror unfolding. "Get down," Marco shouted, pulling Isadora away from the shards of concrete that tumbled toward them. They huddled together, eyes wide, bodies pressed closely as the chaotic scene morphed into overwhelming uncertainty. In the fray, Isadora caught a glimpse of movement through the dust. An armored figure appeared through the chaos, a soldier, gun raised. The terror on his face mirrored their own. "Get out now, they're coming." But another explosion sounded. The floor beneath Lorenzo's father erupted, flinging him and Marco backward. The gun sailed from his grip, clattering away as he crashed against a wall. "Father!" Lorenzo cried, desperation in his voice, as he lunged forward. But before he could reach him, the soldier shouted, "It's too late. We have to go." As dust settled, the reality hit Isadora, a sea of confusion washing over her. Lorenzo's gaze darted between his father and her, a storm brewing in his eyes. Would he stay and fight for a father that tossed threats like candy? The woman stepped forward, quick as lightning. "No time! You must choose. Is it him or the truth?" Suddenly, horrid shrieks echoed from outside. They were coming. Shadows danced across the wall, figures moving like phantoms drawn to the chaos. Men in dark uniforms swarmed the building, their faces hidden beneath gear designed to instill fear. "Go, now!" the soldier urged, each word heavy with urgency. "No," Lorenzo shouted, eyes blazing with resolve. The chaos around them seemed to freeze in that moment. "We can't leave him." The armored soldier's voice was cold as ice. "He's not worth it. Trust me, he's beyond saving." A terrible truth snapped in Isadora's chest. Do they run from danger or stay to protect a monster? Just as she opened her mouth to speak, the front door flew off its hinges, a menacing figure striding in. A dark silhouette bearing a crown of thorns, eyes gleaming in an almost deranged triumph. "Let's end this!" The voice sent shivers down her spine. With a blinding flash, the armored soldier lunged forward. Gunfire erupted. Time stopped, and in that fragile instant, Isadora felt the air split. She barely registered Lorenzo's scream as the world exploded into chaos once more. And just like that, a bullet found its mark. A horror-stricken gasp escaped her lips as everything shattered into darkness. When the sound faded, Isadora found herself standing alone in an empty room, echoes of screams lingering in the air. She looked down. The locket lay in her palm, but the picture was gone, replaced with a burning question. Who survived? Who could she trust? As reality settled in, dread coiled tightly around her chest. Every bond she thought she had began to fray. If everything spun on a web of lies, could she still find a way to the truth? The secrets loomed larger than ever, whispering promises of pain as unknown shadows surrounded her. What awaited her in the darkness? And would she dare step into a world of truth, where betrayals cut deeper than any bullet? Isadora's heart raced as she stood there, alone in the eerie silence, the locket clutched tightly in her palm. The air felt thick with tension, the weight of uncertainty pressing down her shoulders. She glanced down the dark hallway, half expecting chaos to erupt again, but saw only shadows lingering like memories of pain. A flicker of doubt gnawed at her insides. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to shake off the uncertainty. Lorenzo, where was he? Just moments before, he had been right there. And now everything felt steeped in confusion. Then she heard it, a faint sound scratching at the edges of her awareness. It started slow, like whispers drifting through the darkness, but it grew louder, pounding like a drum. And then it broke through. Isadora, that voice, it was Lorenzo's. Relief surged through her, but it was quickly crushed by the impending dread. She turned towards the chaos, heart pounding. Laughing shadows played tricks on her mind as she made her way back, following the echoes of his voice. "Where are you?" Her own voice trembled, searching desperately against the silence. Then, as if in a dream, she spotted him. Beneath the shattered window, he lay on the floor, his face pale and eyes wide with shock. But it wasn't just shock. There was something else, something dark, pooling behind his gaze. "Lorenzo?" she cried. Rushing to his side, he grasped her hand tightly, desperation clawing at his features. "You have to listen to me. We're—" Before he could finish, the door behind him swung open with a crash. Another figure erupted into the room. It was Marco. His face was wild, terror etched in every line. "Go! They're coming!" he shouted, panic dripping from each word. "What's happening?" Isadora felt the ground shift beneath her as fear gripped her. "They found out. The organization is onto us!" Marco gasped, looking between them, his breath quickening. "It's worse than we thought." Suddenly from the shadows, the woman in black appeared again, her figure looming as if she'd materialized out of thin air. "You need to stop," she warned, eyes glinting. "Everything you know. It's all wrong." Isadora's heart stopped. "What do you mean?" But before the woman could answer, the room shook violently, and the lights flickered to an ominous darkness. The chaos surged back. "This isn't about us," Lorenzo shouted, his voice echoing as the walls seemed to close in. "Isadora, what did you see? The locket, what did it mean?" I don't know," she stammered, grappling with the truth. But before she could think, the wall exploded outward. Dust and debris filled the air like a blizzard. She fell backward, coughing, the acrid smell burning her nostrils. Amidst the chaos, she made out something horrific. A figure staggered through the cloud of chaos, bloodied and desperate. Lorenzo's father, Charles, appeared in a disheveled state. His gun was still clutched in hand, face twisted in rage and fear. "You should have stayed away," he roared, aiming the weapon toward the woman in black. But it wasn't her that Charles squeezed the trigger at. With a deafening boom, he fired, a shot that shattered the tense silence with deadly precision. Isadora's heart dropped as the bullet found its target. She watched horror-struck as it struck Lorenzo's shoulder. He fell to his knees, gasping, the shock coursing through his body. "No," Isadora screamed, rushing to him. Tears streamed down her cheeks, clouding her vision. But then Charles's sneer twisted into something far worse. He pointed the gun again, but this time it was at Isadora. "Now you'll see the truth," he shouted, madness swirling behind his eyes. "You're all part of this family. You've always been." Her world tilted, disbelief washing over her. The black clouds around her broke open like thunder, shocking her to the core. "Isadora, you belong to me," Charles breathed, a glimmer of madness flickering in his gaze. And just like that, her reality shattered. The truth slammed into her, a wave crashing down, dragging her under. Who was she really? What connections bound her to this terrifying mess? As Lorenzo clutched his wound, staring at her with a growing sense of betrayal and fear, the pieces of the puzzle swirled into chaos around them. What other secrets lay buried in their intertwined fates? And could they survive now that the man with a gun saw her as part of this twisted legacy? Isadora's pulse thundered in her ears as her world collided with chaos. The gun was still aimed at her. And Lorenzo's father, Charles, bore a twisted grin, eyes glittering with madness. "You're part of this family," he repeated, his voice slithered with authority laced in venom. "No!" Lorenzo shouted, clutching his bleeding shoulder, while the confrontation felt like quicksand swallowing them whole. "Get away from her!" Fear stitched through his panic, but his father was relentless. "You all think you know the truth," Charles sneered, shaking the gun slightly as if it were a toy. "But you're fools!" You were born a part of this." Before he could complete his sentence, a roar erupted from outside, drowning his words. A convoy of black SUVs screeched to a halt just outside the apartment building. Their tires screeched as people jumped out, dressed in suits, but carrying notepads and cameras. A media frenzy. News reporters, eager lenses aimed at the chaos unfolding inside. "Damn it!" Marco cursed, tugging Isadora away from the ricocheting threat of the gun. "We can't let them see this." But it was too late. With this sudden buzz of onlookers, the walls of their private nightmare began crumbling. Charles' lips twisted in irritation. "They're not supposed to know," he spat, and Isadora watched as reality dimmed to chaos wrapped in fear. "Lorenzo!" she cried, the name ripped from her throat as if she could pull him away from danger. He struggled to rise, the blood soaking his shirt, a sickening horror clawing through her. "Go!" Marco yelled at them, his voice breaking through the impending doom. "Run!" The noise swelled, cameras clicked, and it felt like the whole world had descended upon them. The scene was surreal, a whirlwind of chaos, blurred faces, and harsh lights. But just as they turned to escape, a figure emerged through the cloud of light. A woman with long black hair and a calm demeanor, shaded from the chaos that dripped from her surroundings. "Stop!" she commanded, her voice piercing the air like a knife. The rush of adrenaline halted everyone in their tracks. The gun lowered slightly as her presence demanded attention. "Who the hell are you?" Charles snapped, irritation flashing. "Enough, Charles. You're losing control." She stepped toward Isadora, eyes locking onto hers, calm yet fierce. "Listen to me, Isadora. You have to know the truth. You're not just his girlfriend, you're—" But before she could conclude, the world around them exploded into vivid chaos. A loud bang erupted through the space, like thunder cracking against glass. The entire room shook violently. Isadora stumbled, and the lights flickered, plunging them into surreal shadows. "What the—" Lorenzo began, eyes wide with fear. And then it happened. An air of confusion blanketed the room, sending a shockwave of realization through Isadora. Standing there, in the aftermath of the shock, something caught her eye. The black-haired woman, her face frozen in stern determination, suddenly began to change. Isadora blinked as the woman transformed before her, features twisting and morphing. No longer was she a stranger. She became an image, fuzzy at first, and then the face of a woman she knew well, a face that made Isadora's breath catch. "Mom?" The words slipped from her lips, disbelief spiraling through her like a hard kick to the gut. The others stared, jaws agape, as Isadora's heart raced with revelations. "But you died." "Not what you thought," the woman, her mother, said, stepping closer. "I'm here to save you, but you have to trust me now." Isadora shook her head, the foundations of her world cracking apart like ice beneath her. Was this even real? "I knew you were part of this. I just didn't know how." Charles stuttered, his authority slipping away as horror washed over him. The past was surfacing, ripping apart every truth Isadora thought she had understood. But before she could begin to piece it all together, loud sirens blared outside, flashing lights bubbling through the windows, silhouettes racing up the staircase. Paralyzing fear crept back in. The trap was closing. Lorenzo crumbled, clutching his shoulder in disbelief at this sudden twist. "Isadora, we need to leave." In that moment, everything cracked wide open. The truths, lies, the tangled connections wrapping them all in a web of danger. And Isadora struggled to breathe, caught between the past and the firestorm of the present. The call to action thundered around her, but one question echoed louder. Who was she really? And which family would claim her next? Isadora's heart hammered as she stared at the woman who claimed to be her mother. Confusion danced in her mind, swirling like a storm. This couldn't be real, could it? And even as the chaos continued around them, questions flooded her thoughts. Why did you leave me? Isadora's voice trembled, a mix of anger and yearning. How could you let me think you were dead? But just as the words left her lips, the air around them shifted. A loud crash resounded from the hallway, and chaos erupted anew. The door splintered open, thrusting multiple armed men into the room, shouting orders. The panic broke like a wave, smashing against the fragile thread that held them together. "Get down!" Lorenzo yelled, lunging toward Isadora just as bullets ricocheted, striking the walls around them. Gunfire erupted, filling the air with a sharp staccato, drowning out everything else. Isadora grabbed her mother's arm, pulling her back. "What is happening? Are we in danger?" Lorenzo's father, who had faltered in his earlier rage, now scrambled to regain control. Fists clenched tight, Charles's face turned red with anger as he aimed his discarded weapon once more at the intruders. "Stay back!" he shouted, trying to assert dominance, but the soldiers moved in smoothly, expertly. "Hands up! Nobody make a move!" One of them barked, eyes scanning the room like a hawk. The tension stung the air, raw and electric. Isadora felt her breath catch, the weight of dread pressing down on her chest. Her instincts screamed at her to run, to hide from the chaos, but the room held her captive. And then his eyes met hers, the gunman in front. There was something familiar in his gaze, something that twisted her stomach into knots. "Isadora?" She froze. The voice, low and gravelly, sent a chill racing through her. It was a face she hadn't seen in years, a shadow from her past, a childhood friend. "Josh!" She couldn't believe it, yet there he was, alive and in the middle of this nightmare. "Get everyone out, now!" He yelled at the soldiers, body tense, but his eyes were locked on her. "Josh, what? How?" Her voice broke the barriers of fear that hung in the air. But before he could respond, another figure emerged, a woman cloaked in shadows, moving with lethal elegance. Isadora couldn't place her, but she was certain the woman had power. "Step aside, Josh," the woman commanded, stepping into the fray with an air of authority. This isn't the time for friends. The soldiers hesitated, confusion flickering through their ranks. Tension coiled tighter. Isadora could feel it prickling at her skin. Then, without warning, the cloaked woman reached into her pocket and flung a device into the air. "Now!" The thud echoed as it landed, and in an instant a blinding light erupted in the room. Sound drowned in the chaos. They were engulfed in a cacophony of noise and a flash that illuminated the darkness. Isadora squeezed her eyes shut, covering her ears against the overwhelming sound. And in that moment, everything changed. When the light receded, the room was empty. Only the faint outline of smoke lingered. Confusion clouded her mind. "Where is everyone?" she gasped, panic flooding her chest. "Isadora, I'm here!" Lorenzo's voice broke through the fog. She spun around, relief flooding her, only to see him standing alone, the echoes of gunfire fading behind them. Lorenzo, Josh, and the others, they're gone. His voice was low, a whisper of despair. What? Her heart dropped. The world felt like it was tilting on its axis, reality crumbling beneath her feet. But where did they go? What just happened? Out of the smoke emerged that same woman again, now towering with confidence, eyes ablaze. Everything you thought you knew is wrong, she said firmly. You're all tangled in a web of deceit, and it's only just begun. What do you mean? Isadora demanded. The woman stepped forward, her gaze flickering to the locket that had fallen when they were navigating the chaos. Your mother was only the beginning. There are secrets here that will unravel everything. Your lives, your pasts, your futures. What could be worse than this? Isadora felt her voice break. The woman leaned forward, her voice dropping low. You're all part of something much bigger, something that doesn't want you to remember. It's been decades in the making, and they'll stop at nothing to eliminate you before the truth is revealed. A chill coursed through Isadora. The ground felt unsteady beneath her, and all she could do was stare, wide-eyed, at Lorenzo and the woman. Who am I? She whispered, voice trembling. In that moment of realization, the world shifted, revealing the enormity of secrets buried deeper than she could fathom. The tension hung thick enough to choke on. Was anyone really safe? A sharp sound pulled her from the chaos. Beneath the shrill echoes of fear, a revelation screamed louder than the noise around them. Perhaps the biggest secret of all was that Isadora wasn't just swept into this storm. She might be its very axis. And as she looked into the woman's steely gaze, she couldn't shake the chill. Was she meant to confront a truth that could unearth not only her identity, but the fabric of the world around her? And then, just like that, the room fell into silence. A promise of that. Isadora's heart raced as she stared into her mother's eyes, everything hitting hard like a freight train. Confusion bubbled inside her, twisting with fear. "Why didn't you come back for me?" she whispered, voice cracking. But before her mother could respond, the room shook again. It wasn't just an ordinary tremor. It felt seismic, primal. "We have to go," Lorenzo yelled, panic creeping into his voice. Then came the sound, an ear-splitting screech that made hair stand on end, like nails on a chalkboard. The walls around them reverberated, and the lights flickered, casting ominous shadows that seemed to pulse. Suddenly, the door burst open once more, but this time it wasn't just any armed man. It was another woman, cloaked in a military uniform, stern and imposing. "Stop!" she bellowed, her voice sharp as a knife slicing through the chaos. "This is your last warning." The room exploded into movement, confusion wrapping around them tighter than a noose. Everyone froze for just a second, caught in the chaos of urgency. Then, in a bizarre twist of fate, the other woman raised her gun, pointing it straight at Isadora's mother. "You have no idea what you've started," she shouted, eyes blazing with intensity. And in that very moment, the tension bubbled over. Chaos erupted again, but not just from gunfire. The air around them shimmered, like heat waves dancing off pavement. And then a shockwave rippled through the room, like being hit by a car. Isadora felt it roar through her, knocking her backward against the wall. Lorenzo lunged to grab her. "Isadora!" he yelled, but the world turned into a blur. As the dust settled, a sobering silence fell like a curtain. Isadora blinked and looked around, breath coming in ragged gasps. And then she saw it, an orb, glowing like liquid fire, hovering where her mother had been just moments ago. It swirled with colors of red and gold, pulsating like a heartbeat. And then, with the speed of a strike of lightning, it shot across the room. Boom! The orb collided with the woman in military garb, wrapping around her like a serpent. She screamed, a sound of sheer horror that echoed in their ears, and then vanished. Just like that, gone. What the hell just happened? Marco's voice came out in a strangled whisper, eyes wide as saucers, his body trembling. Isadora! Lorenzo reached for her again, pulling her close. You didn't tell me everything. What was she doing here? But Isadora was still reeling, trying to process the fact that her mother had vanished, transformed into what? I don't know, she gasped, adrenaline still pumping through her veins. I didn't know. But then, in a sudden whirlwind of change, the orb flared back to life, bursting forth more energy than before. It swerved towards Isadora, wrapping around her as if it recognized her. Feelings washed over her, comfort, power, clarity. She could almost hear whispers within it, secrets begging to be uncovered. To her horror, she felt a surge of memories flooding back, fragments flashing in her mind. She gasped as images of a different life, one entwined with shadows and rich histories, flooded her consciousness. Then the realization hit. This isn't just about her mother. It's about me, about us. Lorenzo's grip tightened. What's happening? Isadora, talk to me. His eyes searched hers, and in that moment, she saw something else. Fear mingled with understanding. The truth is bigger than we thought, she whispered, feeling the weight of her revelation. More dangerous, more powerful. But before she could elaborate, the walls began to shake again. It was more than just a physical tremor. It felt as though the entire ship of their fates was about to capsize. Thud. A heavy footstep echoed from outside the apartment. A heavy sound, resounding like a drum roll before a catastrophe. The door slammed open, revealing a figure standing tall. A man wrapped in shadows, his face concealed. But the air pulsating around him screamed authority. Enough gains, the figure announced, voice low and commanding. It's time for the truth to come out. Isadora's heart plummeted. All that she thought she knew wobbled on the edge of realization. And as panic bubbled again, she couldn't shake the feeling. Whatever twisted narratives they had held was about to become infinitely more complicated. Who was this new threat? How deep did the secrets go? With the ocean of unanswered questions stretching infinitely before her, everything felt poised on the edge of chaos as she whispered, "What truth?" Isadora's heart raced as the shadowed figure stepped into the light. His presence loomed like a storm cloud, threatening to unleash chaos once more. "Time for the truth," he said, voice iced with authority. Lorenzo's body tensed beside her. "Who are you?" he demanded, protecting Isadora with a fierce determination that tightened her chest. "I am the truth you've neglected," the man replied, moving forward as the air stilled around them. "You've all been played. A game of betrayal runs deep." "Stop it," Isadora cried, fighting the rising tide of fear. "What game? What do you mean?" But the man smirked, unfazed. "You're all connected, more than you realize. This includes you, Isadora." He turned to her with piercing eyes. You carry the legacy and the risk. Fear twisted in her gut. What do you want from me? Protect it or lose everything. His gaze locked onto Lorenzo, then swept over the ragged room, the remnants of their struggle scattered like fallen soldiers. Your father can't be saved, but you can. Your family runs deeper than blood. You must choose, fight or flee. The words hung heavy in the air, sinking their claws into her. Everything felt like it was teetering on the edge. Lorenzo raised his chin defiantly. You know nothing about me or my family. But the man chuckled, a sinister sound that sent chills racing down her spine. You have no idea what uncontrolled power can do. The stakes have never been higher, and time is running out. Before they could react, sirens wailed nearby, cutting through the tense air like a knife. Isadora's heart pounded. They're coming, she whispered, eyes darting between Lorenzo and the newcomer. Now hurry, the man shouted, urging them toward the exit. We don't have time. Who can we trust? Isadora asked, panic rising within her. You have to trust your instincts. He shifted, glancing anxiously at the door. Follow your heart. Only it knows the way. Lorenzo grabbed Isadora's hand, pulling her toward the shattered window. Let's go. We can't let this end here. The fire blazed in his eyes, igniting her hope. As they moved, the world swirled around them. They climbed over debris and escaped into the night, where the storm raged on. The city lights glimmered in chaotic shadows, resonating with their dashed fears. Suddenly, Isadora froze. The locket hung heavy around her neck, a tether to a world she had yet to fully decipher. Wait, she said, pulling Lorenzo back. What if this was all a trap? He looked at her, his expression softening. Together we can break any trap. With a deep breath, Isadora placed her hand over the locket. I feel like it holds the answers, she admitted, her voice steadying. Then let's find them. His confidence lit a fire within her, filling the shadows with light. As they stepped into the unknown, questions flooded her mind. What would they uncover? What dark truths lay ahead? Then, from behind them, a low voice echoed through the night. You can't escape your fate, Isadora. It was the man again, his voice trailing like an ominous warning. But Isadora turned back toward the horizon, determination blooming within. We will forge our own fate. Together they stepped forward, the fear melting into anticipation. The world ahead flickered with mystery and unanswered questions, but they would face whatever came next, together. And that's where their story continues, for every end births a new beginning. Don't let this chapter be the last for you. You must subscribe now so you don't miss out on any upcoming exclusive stories. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm and show your support. It takes just a second. Flood the comments section below with your reactions and theories about this finale, because I want to hear from you. And don't wait 1 second longer to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to know this ending. Your support makes all the difference. Let's build this community together.